It was the surprise announcement at the last public hearing from the January 6th Select Committee, but just because it was a matter of time before they actually did it formally does not make what happened today any less historic. Donald J. Trump was officially subpoenaed by the January 6th Select Committee today. He owes the committee documents relative to the investigation by November 4th of this year, that's 2 weeks from today, and to appear for a deposition on November 14th, notably after the midterm elections. Keep in mind, the twice impeached, disgraced ex-president is expected by many to resist the subpoena, meaning a protracted legal battle is very likely the next chapter in this conflict. In a letter attached to the subpoena, Chairman Benny Thompson and Vice Chair Liz Cheney write this, quote, "As demonstrated in our hearings, we have assembled overwhelming evidence, including from dozens of your former appointees and staff, that you personally orchestrated and oversaw a multi-part effort to overturn the 2020 presidential election and to obstruct the peaceful transition of power." Joining us, Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren of California, a member of the House January 6th Select Committee. Congresswoman, thank you for being here today on such an historic day.
Happy to do it.
What do you expect to happen next? I mean, what are the scenarios that the committee is prepared for?
Well, we'll see what the former president does. He owes us all of these documents that we've asked for. That's very important. And he also is legally obliged to come in and testify before the committee. We understand that, the midterm elections are just a short while from now. So we've scheduled his appearance for after the midterm so as not to interfere with that. But the documents, of course, are due so that we can prepare ourselves for his testimony. Let's assume that he will comply with his legal obligation in this case, although, as he showed on January 6th, he's not always done that.
I want to read a little bit more from the letter for our viewers and talk to you about it. You write this: "The evidence demonstrates that you knew this activity was illegal and unconstitutional, and also knew that your assertions of fraud were false. But to be clear, even if you now claim that you actually believed your own false election claims, that is not a defense. Your subjective belief could not render this conduct justified, excusable, or legal." The work of the committee bore this out so meticulously. The pillar of evidence that he knew he lost, the pillar of evidence that he knew the claims were fraudulent, and the growing mountain of evidence that he knew that violence was the plan and that he was very much a part of that and wanted to be there for it. How do you expect him to respond to all of the evidence you already have that he broke the law?
Well, his first letter to us was kind of a, all cops rant, repeating lies. But I think the committee has very carefully laid out the evidence of what he did and his state of mind while he was doing it. If he, what if he were to say, well, even though I knew, I now believe, or I had a fantasy, or QAnon told me, who knows? It really doesn't justify sending an armed mob to overturn the election on January 6th. So whatever he thought, there was nothing that could justify that.
Do you have any sense as to whether or not DOJ welcomes an appearance or hopes he does not appear should he become a target of their probe?
I have no idea. We've not been in communication with the Department of Justice on this. We're aware that some of the information that we have that's really very distressing that they have, mainly because witnesses have let us know they've also shared things with the DOJ. But we haven't been in a direct sharing mode at this point, although certainly when we finish our work, all of our material will be made known to the public, including DOJ.
And that will happen after the report is complete, after the committee's work is done, and then no holds barred. You will turn everything over to DOJ.
Well, we're going to have to, redact certain. I mean, if you've got a piece of a testimony and you've got somebody's cell phone number, you want to redact that before you release it to the public. But the intention is to release all of our evidence, yes.
Has a decision been made, or will you wait and see how this issue of Trump's testimony plays out on a criminal referral for him?
We're going to wait and see how he responds. Let's not assume, although there's ample evidence to assume he does the wrong thing. I'm prepared to see if he will, for one, step forward and fulfill his legal obligation to come forward. That would be the best case. If he doesn't, then we'll have to examine what our other alternatives are.
I want to read from the list of allegations that accompanied the subpoena today. The twice impeached ex-president is accused by the committee of, quote, purposely and maliciously disseminating false allegations of fraud related to the 2020 election, attempting to corrupt DOJ, illegally pressuring state officials to change election results in their states, orchestrating and overseeing an effort to obtain and transmit false electoral certificates, pressuring Pence to refuse to count electoral votes on January 6th, pressuring members of Congress to object to valid state electors, filing false information under oath in federal court, summoning thousands of supporters to Washington on January 6th, refusing to disband those rioters. The body of evidence that you have marshaled to support every one of those allegations is extraordinary. Does the document request for Trump fall under those specific allegations, or are there new things that you want to shore up?
Well, if you'll take a look at the request for documents, some of it is to shore that up. Some of it are concerns we have in other areas. For example, witness intimidation and interference with the committee's action. But I would just recommend reading through the request for documents, because I think that is also enlightening.
Are you in a different place than you were at the end of the final public hearing, or the most recent public hearing, in terms of the two Secret Service agents that many members of the committee have made clear they believe lied to you?
Well, we're going to be asking, as a matter of fact, we're reaching out right now to re-interview various members of the Secret Service. We have received, as I think I mentioned earlier, we got over 1 million documents from the Secret Service, and it was a tremendous effort on the part of the staff to actually go through that mountain of material and discover relevant pieces of evidence. And we're now in a position to do additional interviews, which are being scheduled now.
Do you believe or wonder if any of the documents the ex-president is working so hard to keep from the FBI and the Mar-a-Lago criminal investigation are responsive to your subpoena today?
We don't know that. I mean, we don't know what he's hiding. And so we can't know whether any of it falls within what we've asked for. Obviously, the classified document issue is not squarely in front of the January 6th committee. We're reading the news like everyone else. We have made a request for a variety of documents, and some of the investigators wondered whether, when the archives went to look for some of that and it was missing, that might have stimulated some of the inquiries, but that's speculation on our part.
Can you just pull back the curtain on the pace of activity? I mean, is the committee still very aggressively pursuing the remaining lines of inquiry and the remaining witnesses? Is it in a frantic? Just tell us what's going on.
Well, I don't think we're frantic, but we are determined, and we meet frequently. As I mentioned before, when we're out of session, we're in our districts, so we meet virtually and multiple times a week. And there are members, clusters of members working on specific issues. We met, some of us this morning, on some of these issues. So yes, we're working hard.
And would you rule out another public hearing if evidence develops that warrants that?
Well, you won't rule anything out. Nothing is planned right now. But as I say, we are busily working. And if a critical set of information became available, we wouldn't want to rule that out.